meaning the things that we call traditions, are at the heart of it. So these people said, you know what, I'm going to have an extended family. And so they went to Morning Star Mission in different shifts through that day to serve them food, to just connect and offer encouragement, which is a profound act of sacrifice. No less at all than a person getting on a plane and going to Guatemala. And these are just a couple of the stories that churches, good churches, and good people who are following Christ are literally making an eternal difference. And it also lands on the earth. It makes a real difference in a person's life. Imagine if you were a prostitute in Jos, Nigeria. Imagine if you were a person in Recitos, Guatemala, who wants to invite their family member or a friend, but it's just the place looks broken down. There's no power. It's a mud mess. How do you invite a person to church when you're in that context? And something about Grace Fellowship Church landed there and did good. And I just want to celebrate God. Isn't that amazing? That's awesome stuff, I think. So, if there are 33% of the people in Mokena, and the statistics say that there are 1 out of every 3 people that we're going to meet in the town in which we live, looks at, if they were asked, is there a discernible difference that Christians make? If they would say no to that question, it's because they have not met us, and that's a solvable problem. This is not a glory for Grace Fellowship Church or for a handful of people who do these things. It's not that. It's to say that Christianity works. At every level, Christianity works. Christianity is not a concept. It's not a great idea. It is, in fact, not a religion. It is truth that changes everything about the world in which we live. And so if they have that opinion, it's simply because they have not come into contact with genuine Christ followers who love Jesus, are willing to align their life with the descriptions that he gives for the kingdom, and it turns into transformed living. So this is what's going on. But here's the deal. We're called, our kingdom calling, every single one of us, is to love, serve, and lift others up. That's what we're called to do. You were made to do 1,000 things. This is one of the definitely things that sits underneath all of them. It's the DNA of everything you're designed to do. But it means, in doing that, it means we're going to we will, in fact, we learned it one special time again in Guatemala. You're going to get grime and dirt underneath your fingernails. When you're doing good, it's dirty. It's messy work. But to say that you're just going to get your fingers dirty or your hands dirty is not to say this. It means something better than that. We get the great joy of dirty hands. Interview every one of the people that went to Guatemala. Ask them if they wish they wouldn't have gone. And they will light up and they'll look you in the eye and say, "Are you kidding me? It changed me. It deepened me. It was a joy. I have friends now I would have never ever had." There's experiences and places of trust, all these different things. They will light up when they tell you that. This is not just simply an invitation the next time we go to Guatemala, because we will. We're going to establish a relationship with those folks down there and continue to do that. But it's not just simply that. It's not just an invitation to that. It's an invitation into the way of life, of lifting other people. Because one thing I found for sure, going to Guatemala, the expectation you probably have is we go down there and we feel bad. That's usually what the people do. People go on missions trips and they feel bad about it. Why? They go down there and they start looking at the conditions and they look at the parents' surface level poverty. And they say, man, how could they possibly be happy? They're so poor. And we're happy because we have so much. Do you guys agree that's a lie? That's a complete lie, because there's probably an even deeper poverty here. Not poverty like we think of, a poverty of soul. To assume that somehow having things would make us happy. So we go down there and we just say, "Oh man, how do you guys struggle through this existence? Oh my goodness!" And you find out that they're trying to coach us through it. Like, we're happy. We're content. We're worshiping our King. We have relationships. We have a home. We have shelters over our head. We have our families. I mean, it was a coaching experience to find out the things that they say and that they showed us. We get to experience, though, in the process, the joy of dirty hands. I want you to turn in your Bibles, if you would, today. John chapter 13. We're going to finish this series where we began it 2 Sundays ago. The Love, Live, Lift series we've been doing. We're going to pick up where Jesus had washed the feet of the disciples, in particular Peter, and he says to Peter, you can't belong to me, he said, remember? You can't belong to me unless I wash you. And well, here's what happens. We didn't finish that part of the story. And then, again, moments before the Lord's Supper is going to be taken, the Last Supper, and then he's going to go off the cross. Here's what he says, John 13, verse 12. After washing their feet, Jesus put on his robe again, and he sat down and he asked, "Do you understand what I was doing?" Meaning, I didn't just do something ceremonial over the top of you. I didn't wave Jesus dust all over the top of you so that you would understand, or that you would experience a ceremony. Do you understand what I was doing? He says. You call me teacher and you call me Lord, and you are right, because that's what I am, he says. And since I, your Lord and teacher, the God of the universe, have washed your feet, you ought to wash each other's feet. I've given you an example to follow. Do as I have done to you. I tell you the truth, slaves are not greater than their master. So if the King of the universe, who made us all, would get down on his knees and clean dirty feet, he's like, if I'm doing it, this is something I'm calling you to do. Do you understand what's happening? He says. You got to wash feet. Pointing out, if you follow me, he says, you're going to find that you're going to get your hands dirty in 1,000 different ways while living this life. Enter that with joy. That's your calling. That's the way I've made you. That's what, when you go to your work, when you go to school, when you go to Burkhart's and you get something here at the store, when you go fill up at the gas station, when you stop or do anything, talk to your neighbor across the fence, all these things are built in and baked into the idea of serving them, to get our hands dirty, doing the work of the kingdom. Because when you do that, lives are going to be changed dramatically. Not the least of which will be you, he says. What could have happened can be transformed into what should happen. Here's the trajectory. Trajectory can be changed. What could have happened can turn into what should have happened. There was a woman and her husband who were walking down the street. This man, the husband, was the mayor of a fairly large city. And they were walking down the street together when suddenly, going the opposite direction down on the other side of the street, there was a mailman. And he noticed the couple across the street. And so he stopped, he looked, and he's like, hey! Hey! And so the couple stopped, and he noticed her. He's like, hey, Peggy! It's me! And you look great! Well, after the moment to take in who this woman was, or who this mailman was, the woman sort of staring, she's like, oh my goodness, this is my old boyfriend. I broke up with in high school. It's been a long, long time. So while the time that it took her to process that, he had already started beeline towards her across the street. So at this point, there was going to be talking going on. And so the two of them politely, talk, and he's like, oh, you look so great. Wow, it's great to see you. Wow, it's been a long time. And, nothing weird. But you have a polite conversation when you're talking to your ex-boyfriend or girlfriend. That's what happened. And so after an appropriate amount of time, he went about his business, went back and started doing mail work, and the couple went back in the direction they were going. So as they're a little bit down the block, the husband sort of chuckles, the mayor. He's like, honey, here, just think about it this way. If you'd have married that guy, you'd been the wife of a mailman. She's like, no, if I'd have married him, he'd have been the mayor of the city. Yeah? The difference is, it's women, right? That's how women think, right? What could have been and what should have been, right? Changed dramatically because of who was involved. And that's what's going on. You're made by God to lift others in every facet, in every moment of our life, to serve them in ways that will most likely get us gritty, grimy, and dirty. Dirt under the fingernails. Some of you who are older will probably remember the old slogan of the Peace Corps. Does anyone remember this? The toughest job you'll ever love. Remember that? I was a little kid. Toughest job you'll ever love. I think this looks and feels a lot about what we've been talking about during this trip to Guatemala. There's a dignity and a strengthening and a joy in working hard when you know that the only person who will benefit from it will be someone else other than you. There's a certain dignity and joy in that, that's different than doing if you were just doing your own job. To know, you know what, this here is about them. And what happens when we do that? Because there's a smaller dignity. It's a dignity in some way, but it's a smaller dignity to living when we live to serve only our own needs at the moment. When we're just about us. We got to get food on the table, we got to pay the bills, da-da-da. There's a dignity in that. We're supposed to be alive and we're supposed to be doing our life right. But there's a greater depth of dignity and strengthening that comes when we're serving other people. But that's hard to do. It's harder to get up out of bed, and folks who are on the Guatemala trip can attest to this. Don't say amen because we all know it. It's hard to get out of bed at 5 in the morning to go and dig ditches. when you're like, I'm not going to see this place when I get here next week. A week from right now, I won't ever see, I may never ever see that place again. It's harder to do that, but when we do get up out of bed, when we start doing that hard work, we all worked hard in the different things we did. We all wanted to go home by the end of the day. We all wanted to go to sleep. It was hard work. No doubt, getting on your knees to serve other people, it's challenging, it's hard, it's exhausting, and it's humbling, but it's something else too. And we can attest to this from personal experience. The folks who are in Guatemala. It's hard, but there are thrills that far outweigh the toils. There's thrills that are built into it, that if it's done selflessly, and it's done saying, you know what, this could be something good for them. In doing that, the thrill of a couple of things. One, seeing someone's life better really matters. It's enriching, because you're saying, while I'm digging this ditch, I'm thinking about somebody else who's dug a ditch for me. There's been a lot of people dig ditches for me. You sit there as you're toiling away, sweating to death, you're thinking, you know what? People who are up high painting, people who are up on ladders inside these burning hot buildings, they're doing the wiring. We're all probably doing the same sort of math in our head. There's been a lot of people who've done this for me. I wouldn't be here. And so you begin to do that. You see somebody else's life better, and you realize that your life has been better in the same way. There's also a thrill of being loved by someone, by the people that you're serving or a person that you're serving. There was an encounter like no other, and I've been on 4 different outside the country mission trips. And this was the first time I'd ever had this happen. When we were on our last work day in Bracitos, we finished our work that day, and the folks who were from the church, they said, we want to circle you, we want to do something for you. We want to pray for you. They were doing what they could do. They made us a great meal. Was that Thursday or Wednesday? Was that Thursday, the meal? Oh, was that good? But they fed us lunch, and then before we were leaving, they circled us up, and they prayed for us. But it was not just simply praying, like here, we probably expect, because we white, I guess, it's the way we do it, it's kind of stiff and suburban. Somebody at the front would pray. Hey, Rick, would you go up and pray? Oh, sure. Well, maybe let's have 3 people pray, and 3 people would pray in order. Which is good, because it's praying as opposed to not praying. What was unique about this, and was the most enriching experience, or I'd say for a great number of us, is they got us in circles, and some of us got down on our knees, and they surrounded all 25 of us with themselves, and they began to all pray out loud. Every one of them were praying out loud. And some of them were weaving in, and they would be praying for us, because at this point, most of them knew us by name and them by name, and they would pray. I knew they were praying in Spanish, but I'd just been long enough to know I know what they're saying, essentially. And it was good. To have somebody put their hand on you and pray for you by name, it was mind-blowing. It feels good to be loved by someone, to be cared for by someone. And we had to go all the way down there to realize that that's the kind of things that can happen. And it's not just something that happens with Guatemalan people. This is the kind of thing that's supposed to happen in Mokena. Because guess what? We all have souls. We all have deep needs. It's a thrill of having that happen. It's the thrill of also seeing something new in our life that we did not see before then. Had we not gone and done it or gone to that place, we would have never experienced that. It's a mind-opening moment or two. And there's definitely that for me. And one last little part, and I don't have a Bible verse to quote this, but I think we're all going to understand it. There's a thrill of actually living life. And it's grit and sweat and challenge. The difficulty of trying to connect with people that not only do you not know their language, you don't even quite know how you're going to connect. There's a thrill of living life like that instead of just reading about somebody else's post on Facebook about it. Yeah? Or living vicariously through some character we're watching on TV. We all got on Netflix, we're watching stories and following them all the way through all 12 seasons of it. And we're living our life inside, and I got to get home to find out about somebody else's story. What if God's placing you in a story that lasts into eternity? And there's some thrill about that because, it's an adventure. When we were all landing in Guatemala, there wasn't a one of us. That was fun. Not knowing, am I safe? Who are they? What's it going to be like? Live life. Don't just read about it. Don't just watch it on TV. There's a joy in serving and extending ourselves into other people's lives, and that brings that thrill, that heartbeat speeding up. In the process, we're finding new things about ourselves, We're finding out living stories with people who are now irretractably closer to us. Two dramatically different stories, but each have their own sort of quality. Towards the end of our trip, the shaggy-headed guy here at the last one gave me the testimony. If you don't know him by name, it's Mark Retall, the electrician. Towards the end of the trip, we were together, and again, we have 25 of us. We were all kind of around this town, and we were making our way back at the end of this day, and we're walking down. He's on the sidewalk. Sidewalks are pretty narrow, and I'm on like a cobblestone right next to him. We're walking down the street.
You didn't tell this story.
Oh, yeah. Yep. So we're walking down the street together, all right? We're making our way. We're a couple blocks from the square that we're going to meet up with everybody else. And behind us, kind of unexpected, a woman in a little subcompact car comes up. She says to us from the side, "Hey, babies, where you going? Where are you going?" And Mark, who never misses a beat, says this, "Hey, baby, we're going crazy. We're going crazy." So she's like, and then she was like, she wanted to get back to business. She's like, "Well, no, where are you going physically?" Which I think she meant geographically, but we knew it was headed. There wasn't one of the three of us who failed to understand what she was asking for us. "Where are you going that I can meet you?" Right? Okay, we all knew what was going on. And once we had that sunk in, I looked at Mark, and Mark looked at me, and after his joke, because I was laughing at just what he had said already, I said, "Hey, we're good. We're good." And so she sped down the road to some other fool that was talking, right? Mark, who after the fact, moments after that, he's like, "Man, if I would have just had another thought, I'd have put my arm around you and said, 'No, we're taking it.'" And you know what? I'll never not have that moment. I don't know who was the man or the girl in the story, but he has the long hair. I just want to point that out. The thing is, I'll never not have that experience. Irretractably connected to Mark. Okay? And that was one of a bunch of them. A bunch of them. And you can do that here too. You don't have to go on a plane and spend a week and a half away to have those kind of moments. You're going to have it. There will be people who will have that 2 or 3 weeks from now when we have our work day. You'll have a moment like that. The other side of the dramatically different one, but something of the same sort of sort, when we were at our 2-day pastoral training, is Evja in the room? Evja was the translator for that. And we're meeting with pastors, and I think over the course of that time, I think we had 10, 12 pastors, and most of them brought their spouses as well. And the longer that pastoral training went, the more comfortable we felt, the more comfortable they felt. Evan did an amazing job translating, and it just the gelling started happening. Well, we started talking about what's the hard things you're doing as pastors. So we wanted to encourage them, keep going. Well, we asked them, what's the hardest thing you're facing right now? And one of them stood up, one of the pastors, his wife sitting right next to him, and he said, "We have been on the verge of quitting each other," meaning him and his wife. In a place of profound poverty, Guatemala, specifically in a town of even greater poverty than the average of the country, in a profession where these people they're not daddy warbucks. That pressure, the economics, and just the things that tear them apart, just doing pastoral ministry, whether you get paid well or not, is very difficult. And he's like, we're very close to making a decision to quit our marriage. And to see him saying this, to be transparent in a very macho culture, and to see his wife sitting next, am I right? To see his wife sitting next to him with tears in her eyes. The fact that they were transparent, confessed it, and like, I don't know what to do with it. And know that they were re-energized towards each other, towards the kingdom, towards the work of the church. And that family stays together. It's just so encouraging to know, just even the slight, just showing up and asking a question, how are you guys doing? What can we pray for you about? What can we do? To just be able to get in that kind of environment. They don't even get them. They don't get environments like that. It just lit me up. Absolutely lit me up. There is a joy. There is a story. There is a strengthened character, and there is friendships in serving others. In lifting up others, we get lifted ourselves. I cannot express to you how much more on point my life is today than it was the week before I left for Guatemala. How much more energized, how much more reminded I am what the church is and what the church isn't. things that we learned back there, we were lifted when we're lifting others. Well, John 13:17, I want to finish up here. Jesus capstones his direction. Verse 17, look at this. He points out this motivational encouragement for serving other people by lifting. He's like this: now that you know these things, God will bless you for doing them. Just a simple promise. Now that you know it, if you start doing it, God will bless you for it. I want to encourage you, brothers and sisters and friends, the next time you have an opportunity to go do some heavy lifting, get your fingernails dirty, get involved in something messy, to get it done, and the next time you have to do that, and the only hitch is that to keep you from doing it is that you want to watch your favorite TV show, or you could get another hour of overtime. Go do the heavy lifting. Go scratch out something. Jump into the middle of that. Go live. Go live. Because you know what? There's going to be a story there. And it's going to be bigger than the thing you did. Because now there's something with you and that person or that people, that family, whatever the situation is. And now you have a friendship. And now it matters. And it lasts past that moment. Watching the TV show, doing the extra hour overtime. No one ever died, went to heaven, and said, thank God for all the overtime I got to have. Because guess what? I got to get this new, oh wait, what was that I got? Right? No one ever praises God for overtime in eternity. We're thankful for provisions. Believing the poorest of us is the richest down there. There's time to do good. There's things to say, I can let go of that. I don't need to do that overtime. This matters more. I want to get my fingers dirty. I want to live life. You'll be blessed while you're being a blessing. It is a promise. It is a promise that God makes to us, each one. I want to tell you one last story. It was the defining moment for me on this trip. It reminded me of whatever sacrifices I perceived or inconveniences or adjustments I had to make for me and my son to go to Guatemala with this team of 25. It made them all seem very shallow. It's my goal to bring all 4 of my kids into a global trip before they hit high school. I want them to have their worldviews expanded, and there's nothing like going to a place like Guatemala, in this particular, meeting these people, seeing the situations and what have you. I want them to get stretched. My first mission trip I took was when I was 21. And I so wish I had gone before then, because I think I wasted a lot of time, money, hustle, anxiety, ambitions on a lot of waste stuff. You know what I'm talking about, people? Amen? Waste a lot of energy on everything. And I wish I'd have known then to be like, I'm not going to waste any more on that. This stuff is what really is going on in the world. But that's the way it was. And so I wanted to get ahead of it for my kids. And so I brought my son on this particular trip. He's 14 years old. And the first day of the trip, we were separated from each other. He was digging ditches, and I was talking to pastors. My one was live this year. And so he got up at 5 that morning. He's digging the ditches alongside the Erickson boys and a couple other men. I know Brett was getting in there as well. So they're digging ditches. And he came back that afternoon, that evening, and I did as well. But that day, after the first day of the pastors' conference, what I was doing, the pastor there extended a phenomenal honor to us and said, will you come back tonight? We have church. The house was not just packed on Sunday. The house in church was packed on Monday night, too, for them. And so we have Monday night service, Pastor. Will you come back and speak tonight? Now, this is 3 hours before it happens. And I said, of course we will. Of course we will. What an honor to be asked. Almost immediately called Rick. Rick Tussin, one of our pastors here, and I said, Rick, hey, I know how you're going to do in this situation, but I know it's probably your first chance to have it translate, work, and have a live crowd in a place outside the country. Would you like to preach? I asked the pastor if he's okay with that. Would you like to do that? He's like, oh, I just jumped right in the middle of it. And believe me, he represented you so well. He did an amazing job, Rick. Really touched hearts that night. So this place was alive. He did a phenomenal job preaching. The pastor church just lit up. The worship was amazing. Those of you who are here today who said, wow, this church is like, whoa, you're a little wild. The church is supposed to be a little more simmered down. This church makes this place look simmered down. The people in Guatemala knows what I'm talking about. They meant it, so they showed up doing it. Well, this is all going on. Well, as worship is going on, I'm sitting on the front row. My son is sitting next to me, but I'm against kind of the wall. So here for me is the stage, but I'm also kind of keeping an eye on the people. I wanted to see what was going on. There's this little old lady. She had to be at least 85 years old, and she was very, very engaged in as much expression as she could offer. But she was dressed in very traditional looking clothes. She had like a shawl or a head covering, and clothes, if my memory serves me right, was probably something traditional, more Mayan, whatever it might be. She looked ancient, more ancient than any of us. And I just noticed her because we were only a couple rows away, and she was just very expressive and joyful. Well, just like at Grace Fellowship Church in Mokena, the church in Zunalito said, hey, in these next few moments, while the musicians are playing the songs, go and shake hands with somebody, go and embrace someone, go and say hello, welcome to the church. So they all set out. Well, this little old lady who I'm standing here, I'm open to it, she makes a beeline. We don't even have much time. She penguins over, She makes a beeline for my son, my 14-year-old. She has to be a foot shorter than him. She penguins over and she just embraces it. And I think she must have whispered some kind. I was listening to her. I think she just prayed some kind of blessing over him. She just looks him in the eye and just embraces him. She does the same thing for me, but it wrecked me. It wrecked me. Seeing this little lady whose world is so distant from his. There are no two people further apart in this world than these two. And God brought them together. And it wrecked me. Like Rose, my view of God and his kingdom work extended so much beyond the four-wall version that we do of church, of my Christianity. She embraced him and she prayed over him and she loved on him. And I don't know the effect it was as great on him as it was on me. But it was profound. I'll never, ever not have that moment again. I will remember that woman into eternity. And I will embrace her. I will fall on her neck. The next time I see her, if it's in heaven or on earth, I will fall on her neck and I will embrace her and I'll pray for the blessing of her too. What's my point? That woman waddled 10 feet. And it changed eternity. Just by being her. She loved Christ. She was living a life that's genuine. She was doing that every day of her life. It made sense to do it right here. That's what made her lift me. It lifted me. Something as simple as the time when Sean or Steve or Mike or Rick or Janine or Michelle, whoever might invite us on any given Sunday, you know what? Shake hands with the person some people right there near you. You know what? Skip the people right near you. Go find some, penguin over to somebody. And embrace them and say, you know what? God bless you. God bless you. And it will blow the world up. You might be surprised. And if it doesn't blow that person up, the person that's sitting next to them, it may. Because it changed me. It changed me. The kingdom is bigger than us. But we're called into it. And it will probably involve a little bit getting fingers dirty. Believe me, we begin to fully feel a part of it when we get our hands into it.